Hello and welcome to another episode of Tips from the Top. My name is Rick Barron and I'm co-hosting today's show with
Veronica Sanford, and today we have Charley Frank from the Cincinnati Reds. He's the Executive Director of Cincinnati Reds Community Fund. He began as Executive Director of the Reds Community Fund in 2004. He directs the fund's field renovation efforts, developed the youth baseball, softball funding programs, and expanded the Reds Rookie Success League. Recently, he helped oversee the completion of the $7.5 million P&G Cincinnati Major League Baseball Urban Youth Academy, which will serve more than 10,000 kids annually. He has established annual fundraisers such as the Marty Brennaman Golf Classic, Red Legs Run, Family Catch, and Fox Sports Ohio Reds Community Fund Telethon. Frank is a Walnut Hills High School and Northwestern University graduate, spent 11 years with the NBA's Minnesota Timberwolves as Vice President of Communications, and began his career at WEEI AM with the Bolton Celtics radio network. Can you give us some background, some context of where you are with leadership and the Cincinnati Reds?
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be with you both today. Hearing the background and the bio, I think about coming out of school and being a sports and marketing enthusiast and having a great opportunity to land on my feet right away in Boston, in a great market during a very exciting time in Boston sports, and then moving to Minnesota, and at a young age having the opportunity to lead a staff of individuals that was quite a bit older than myself. So that was a great opportunity to get my feet wet, and over a decade there took on more and more responsibility, becoming one of the team's vice presidents and overseeing 7 departments. So a lot of different people to lead and manage, learning a lot of new disciplines on the fly. That was a great opportunity for me to get ready for this next experience and this next chapter with the Cincinnati Reds. I'm a Cincinnatian, as you indicated, Walnut Hills High School, so I'm thrilled to be home in a community that I care about passionately, and with a team that is in my DNA, and having an opportunity to not only lead a young staff. I was the first full-time hire of the Reds Community Fund back in 2004, and now we're a full-time staff of 8 with interns that total more than 20 at any given time of year. So there's a lot more leadership required than there was at the time that I arrived. But beyond just the leadership of people is the leadership and the trust and the responsibility that comes along with being a part of this incredible, iconic baseball organization that means so much to this region, and then being connected to representing that team in the community and helping identify projects and people that could benefit from the Reds' involvement. So there's a leadership that's ingrained in terms of that role in the community as well. So I've been very blessed that I've had some very exciting experiences and the opportunity to work with some amazing people as I do today, and yet at this age I'm able to manage a lot of people who are coming in the industry as I once did, and really try to sympathize and empathize with what it takes for them to understand their way and to have the same opportunities that I had with people that care about them and help show them the way.
Perfect.
Charley, you had indicated that your role has really grown over the past 10 years, from literally a team of 1 to now dozens almost of people. How have you had to change with it over the last 10 years?
Well, when I arrived, it was a much more independent scenario. It was a previous ownership regime, and at that time in the industry, a lot of the community relations and foundation arms and sports were more detached. So you were much more autonomous. The expectations were less, and I really was primarily reporting to our board at the time. Fortunately for me and for everyone else involved with the Reds Community Fund, when the Castellini family purchased the team in 2006, they brought a new dynamic vision to the entire franchise. And from the day that they arrived in January of 2006. They very much wanted this to be an organization that was not only successful on the playing field, but that was doing great things at the ballpark to engage their fans, and that was also doing visionary things in the community. I mean, those were really the three staples. So when that day arrived in 2006, the entire landscape of the job changed. It was a very exciting, terrific job before, but it became one of the most dimensional experiences of my life. Those first couple of years, getting up to speed with what the Castellinis expected and what they wanted and what they demanded out of everyone inside the organization was breathtaking. It was a learning experience, and for all the right reasons. They take no prisoners. They really want this franchise to be the best in class in every conceivable way, and they're not afraid to tell the community about it and not afraid to challenge their staff. So, that was a huge adjustment period, just, going from, a sleepier nonprofit environment where we were doing good work and everything was appreciated, to a more demanding environment where they wanted you to take this model that had been working in greater Cincinnati and all of a sudden be in step with what they were trying to accomplish throughout the region to make the Reds, the great regional destination and the great, regional presence that they had been in their heyday back in the 1970s.
Great. Wow. Okay. So, Charlie, how do you develop leaders, especially young leaders?
Again, it's so important to to recall having been there, and to be inspired by and mentored by people that really care at that level, that never forget the importance of being able to make time to listen to people trying to get in the industry. I think that, my formula has been one that's really based on interpersonal ability. I was a communications major in college, and I spent a great deal of time in college in radio, TV, film, and a lot of that broadcast experience has made it easier for me just to communicate. I'm more comfortable communicating, and that, as I realized as I became acclimated to this job, was a bigger piece of it, but not only in terms of being at any number of countless events or speaking in front of any number of groups, which is an important part of the job. It's also the ability to communicate clearly to those working with us so that they can understand what our mission is, so that they can be heard. Sports is an industry and nonprofit is an industry, and sort of being fused into both, that, the saying is you get rich in other ways. So, the people that are working in sports at the entry level especially, and people on the business side, I should be clear. On the playing side, I hear there is more money to be made. But, as people are getting into the industry, and certainly in the nonprofit world, you're doing it because you believe in something. So, over my professional career, as I've led, I've tried to be humble. I've tried to never forget the skill of listening, which was one of my mother's greatest gifts. You just need to stay connected with people. I mean, I know it's a cliche that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that rings true in any business. I have so many blind spots in terms of my day-to-day work. I'm sure everyone does, but I have plenty of them. And, the fact that I try to be honest about them and self-deprecating at times with them, but really caring with the young staff and nurturing, try to show a genuine interest in who they are. Always try to encourage them to take on new opportunities, even if that means losing great people early on. And our department within the Reds organization has really built the reputation of being a stepping stone to great things. And we've lost fantastic people. But in doing so, I always do so enthusiastically because, from the time folks have been in our department or, inside this industry for a couple of months, they've already earned their keep because there's so many sacrifices and demands. So the least that I can do is help people along the way so that, the interpersonal style to me is really the way that I've been able to develop people, I think.
Charlie, the Reds Urban Youth Academy not only focuses on helping kids learn about baseball and softball, but focuses on improving academics and life skills. Are there any challenges that are unique to working with inner city youth that you might not experience in other leadership areas?
Absolutely. And our Reds Urban Youth Academy is an incredible facility, and I hope that fans have had an opportunity to see it or read about it or hear about it. It just opened to the public on August 22nd of this year. We had Commissioner Seelig and Joe Morgan and Frank Robinson and Brandon Phillips and Joey Vaught. I mean, it was really an incredible event for us and for the Reds. And I should also say, and I'm proud to say, that there's no other team in sports that has a facility like this in the community that has been built by an ownership team this committed to doing a project that doesn't directly benefit their major league product or even their minor league system. So this is really a one-of-a-kind facility in sports, I would argue. And as you mentioned, Rick, we are focusing almost exclusively on urban kids. That's where Major League Baseball has lost an entire generation. If you look in the stands, it doesn't have that diversity that any team would want as an industry. If you look at the kids playing it and where they play it, it's very healthy in the suburbs. Baseball has become somewhat of an expensive elite sport, so what we're trying to do through the Urban Academy is bring baseball back to the urban core. The programs that we provide, whether it's baseball or girls fast pitch softball, the educational and vocational programs that you referenced that are so important to this initiative are all free of charge. And we have some magnificent partnerships, including one with the University of Cincinnati and their School of Education. But the challenges of working in the inner city, as you might guess, I live in a suburban neighborhood and very close to an urban neighborhood, and there are kids, from both sides of the tracks that play on the teams that I coach. And, the suburban parents and the suburban networks are so functional, and they make it so easy for the kids and the coaches. You have layers of support in the urban core, where you have many more single-parent households, where that single parent or adult might be wearing so many different hats, working different jobs, where the coaches that know what they're doing and know how to relate to kids are coaching so many different teams and leading so many different sports and pulled in so many different directions that those resources are much harder to come by. So, we have to make sure that we have established rules so that there are expectations, so the investments that we're making in the number of kids for different clinics and programs, that those resources aren't wasted, but at the same time we need to make sure that we don't lash out at the adults that are trying to administer the programs and penalize the kids in the process. So you have to have process, but you also have to have heart. And for us to reach the kids in the way that we want to, it requires a lot of patience, a lot of creativity, and a lot of experience. So we have people advising us that live in the city, work in the city, coach in the city. Many that have grown up playing ball in the city, coaching in the city, having success in business, and maybe moving out to the suburbs, but still finding an avenue through the Reds Community Fund and our new Urban Youth Academy as a vehicle to give back. So it requires the patience, but also a lot of information and strategy to make sure that you're reaching the right kids and that you're not giving up just on the difficulties inherent there and deciding, all right, well, we just want kids in here, it doesn't matter where they're from, and all of a sudden, change your course, because we really want to make an impact in the urban core with this project.
Thank you.
All right. So now, how do you deal, Charley? I imagine that at least on one occasion, you have dealt with difficult people. And do you have any advice on how to deal with difficult people?
Yeah, I suppose so. Being in the public eye with the Reds, you're reminded every day of the level of expectation on a franchise like this one. And there should be. I mean, there should be expectations. And trust me, our ownership wants there to be expectations. So, we'll stumble every day onto people who we thought were having a great experience either at the ballpark with one of our events or at a home game with one of our sales programs or at the Urban Academy or out in the community with one of our outreach initiatives. And a lot of times you might find out that, something happened that you weren't aware of. In our position, you always have to be mindful of the fact that the Reds are a public trust, and it's not just a private business. People feel like they have a stake in this because they do, and that's one of my very favorite aspects about the way the Castellinis operate the team is, they don't see themselves as a private business and they're holding on to their little piece. They see this as a public trust, and they run it, literally as stewards. And I think, in this day and age, that's what you need in sports. So if we're truly stewards, then every opinion counts. And any negative experience, at the very least, requires communication. It also requires experience to know that you're not always going to be able to please everyone. But what we found out is that if you are prompt in your response, if you're courteous and respectful, if you don't allow yourself to engage in the event that the person on the other side of the conversation it becomes agitated or confrontational, then I think I could always look Bob or Phil Castellini in the eye and say, hey, we really did everything we could. They understand that there are going to be some situations where somebody's simply not going to be pleased, and there are going to be reasons why people have every right not to be pleased, and they're, of all the things that could happen during any one games, at a ballpark that's drawing 2.5 million fans, or, with the tens of thousands of kids that play on the ball fields that we've, helped refurbish, or in the programs that we participate in, these things are going to happen. So the other piece of it is, especially with young staff too, you can't allow them to be crestfallen when problems arise. If you have an outdoor program and the weather turns rotten and you can anticipate that you're going to have issues, that's one thing. You can plan for those sorts of things. If you're responsible for 125 kids on a certain evening and one of them gets seriously injured, that's a very frightening thing, and you need to make sure that that situation is managed properly, and that a concerned parent, adult, that might have a strong opinion, or that might be, jumping you with a lot of questions that you might not be prepared for, that they feel heard, and that they realize that you're doing everything that you can to give them the information that you have, and to be respectful and approachable.
Thank you. If you're just joining us, you've been watching Tips from the Tops and Charley Frank from the Cincinnati Reds Community Fund.
There you go.
Charley, one of our goals on the program is to uncover those golden nuggets that you've discovered through your career. What are your golden nuggets?
We've talked about a handful of them. The first one, Rick, I'd say is no matter how smart someone might be, I've worked with people who, in terms of vision and strategy, are miles ahead of the rest of the room. But if they don't have the ability and they don't take the time and effort to connect with people, it really doesn't matter. You clearly need to be able to understand the bigger picture in order to lead. But you need to be able to connect, and interpersonal skill isn't just something that you learn, anecdotally from family members. It's something that you need to work at, and that I don't think people necessarily always grasp that. And I think I reached a point maybe midway through my career where I thought, okay, well, I've been in a lot of different situations, and I think I know how to handle them. And then my job changed, and I was working with people that I didn't know as well, from backgrounds that I wasn't as familiar with, and the game changed entirely. So, the interpersonal piece is important, and like anything with education, you can never, ever stop learning, and you can never stop trying. And, I guess I'm lucky because that's where I think I derive most of the enjoyment from my job, as wonderful as it is to work for this great franchise that I followed as a kid, and to be out there on behalf of that franchise working in the community that I love. It's still the day-to-day relationships with coworkers and people in the community that drive it, and that's where the fulfillment really comes from at its core. So the interpersonal skill isn't something you develop one time and you put it on your belt and you're done. It's something that you need to work at all the time. The next one I'd say is just passion. It's such a natural thing. you know, if you're passionate about what you do, it's not going to feel like work. Well, you know, any job that demands a lot and forces you to compromise your personal time and your family time is going to feel like work. But I can tell you that in the industry that I was lucky enough to choose, I've never ever felt like I was looking at a clock, that I was trying to figure out how I was going to get through a day. Every day in this position with the Reds is brand new. And I realize, even having been in it now for a decade, that I have the same level of passion for it that I had from the day that I arrived, probably more, just because it's evolved to a point where there's so much more to it. You know, I tell my children, and I know when I speak to kids that are in college trying to find their way, or in high school, it's an easy first step. But you know, if you follow that step of finding something that you really are passionate about, and I guess I'm lucky. I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, you know, and maybe numbers people, you know, I'm sure they're passionate about what they do here. But for who I am, I found the passion that was right for me, something that speaks to my background, that speaks to my family, my personality, where I'm from, what I'm about. It matters to me every day. So, you know, and I try to make sure that I lead with passion. And I try to make sure that the individuals that might be a part of my world that don't have it, that I'm able to communicate to them that, you know, maybe while they could contribute in other ways, that they're probably better served to find something else inside the Reds organization or beyond that really inspires them. Every job these days is so much more demanding than it was a decade ago. I mean, baseball, you know, it doesn't have an off season anymore. You know, weekends and holidays that other people enjoy are still your work time. I mean, other people's playtime is still your work time. So if you're not passionate about it, that formula is not going to work. And I try to be very upfront with our young staff, especially about that. And you know, the other thing that I try to instill upon them is to not shy away from their weaknesses. You know, nobody's going to show up being, you know, established in every area of a job. It's just, you know, and people can be successful that way. You know, what I see in great leadership, and I see it right now with the Reds and the Castellinis, they hire the smartest people they can. They surround themselves with the best. They're not threatened by that. You know, I'm not great at plenty of parts of my job. I have a terrific guy named Matthew Wagner, who has been with us 6-7 years, who's grown into a leadership role with our accounting and day-to-day operations. You know, a lot of the things that, you know, I don't have as much time to focus on, and that I'm not as skilled as he is. And I'm grateful to him that he is. And our department operates better because, you know, we have somebody who's excited about that aspect of the work, focusing on it at a level that I probably wouldn't. And he knows that, and I know that, and our staff knows it, and I have no problem with that. You know, I try to tell our staff, don't navigate around the areas where you may not feel like you have a lot of knowledge. Ask questions. Make mistakes. You know, if you make a good mistake, nobody's going to mind. And a good mistake, you know, when you've done all the research and you're prepared for a decision, and if you've done all the blocking and tackling and the decision goes wrong, great learning moment. You know, if somebody makes a hasty, ill-informed decision, well, sure, that's not going to go over well. But there's so many good mistakes to make. And having a blind spot or a weakness is not a mistake. That's human. You know, again, there are precious few great leaders that don't have blind spots. You know, so that's a key one. And the other one that I try to model for them, especially in a demanding industry, is balance. I know that they notice when I leave early to go home to be with my kids, to coach their teams, or, you know, to be with them at school performances. I'm inspired when I see, you know, my boss, Phil Castellini, do the same thing. I love that about Phil. And that permeates. You know, when people see you making decisions that are based on balance, not just going to an emergency, but being there for the non-emergencies and doing your best to try to maintain some balance even in a demanding work environment. You know, I think that's an important part of leading a young staff as well.
Thank you.
great golden nuggets. Okay, so at this point in your path, was there anything that you wish you had known in the past?
Well, I probably could have guessed growing up that, and I knew at an early age that sports was, what I wanted to do, and I was an okay baseball player, but I thought not many people make it in baseball, and the business side of it may be the better option, and I really was drawn to the broadcasting side. And a lot of my friends throughout high school and college, after we all completed school, would tease me a little bit because I was the one that seemed to be on this linear trajectory. I knew what I wanted to do by 8th or 9th grade and didn't deviate much from that. And had some very good breaks along the way, and I'm sure made the most of them to lead myself to that next opportunity. I never really thought about what the sacrifice would entail. You don't think about those things when you're starting in business and you're fresh out of college and you're trying to run through cinder block walls and prove yourself and make yourself indispensable. The part that I wish I could have planned for a little bit differently was just the everyday strategy needed in order to make a marriage work where my spouse has an incredible career as a veterinarian, and trying to make sure that I was able to make my way through my industry without requiring her to make certain sacrifices that she needed to make along the way. And I just mentioned balance, and while I definitely try my best, I wish that I might have had somebody in a similar role who could have said, hey, here in about 5 to 10 years, buddy, you're going to have some really tough forks in the road. And I think if you're in a position, especially that is a higher profile one like this one with the Reds, probably higher profile than I've experienced before. There is an added demand to that. So it's hard to say plan for balance when you're 22 years old, or even when you're 28 years old, or even when you're 33 years old. The older you get, and as kids advance, and every opportunity that you realize that you missed, that you're never going to get back, that part's difficult. So I'd like to maybe be able to take that experience and help others with that balance piece.
Great. Charley, we've only got a couple minutes left. Is there something that you'd like to ask our audience, our viewers, something that the Reds Foundation needs, something that's coming up, an event that you'd like to promote?
Sure. We have our Reds Fest event, which is coming up December 5th and 6th. That's Friday and Saturday. For those of you that haven't experienced Reds Fest, there's nothing like it. There's no team that puts on a winter festival that includes all the players, coaches, broadcasters, former players, and that utilizes literally the entire Duke Energy Convention Center. What the Reds invest in that event is phenomenal. So I would really like to encourage people, if you haven't been there before, go to reds.com/RedsFest. You'll see the whole layout of the event. You'll hear about our Reds Fest Celebrity Poker Tournament, which is a Texas Hold'em event, which features 575 players. This thing's crazy. Find out more about that. That's a very, very useful fundraiser, exciting fundraiser for the Reds Community Fund. Of course, 2015 is our All-Star year, so we'll go from Reds Fest into so much of the exciting activities that will culminate in early to mid-July with the 2015 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. So again, go to reds.com and you can learn more about how fans can get involved at different levels, not just in terms of purchasing tickets. And then I also hope that people will visit our Urban Youth Academy website. You go to reds.com/academy and look at the pictures, the video. Come see us in Roselawn. This is a public park, a partnership with the City of Cincinnati, the Recreation Commission, P&G, and many others. Check it out. Learn more about what the Reds are doing in the community. That would be a fantastic takeaway.
Thank you, Charley. You've been watching Tips from the Top with Charley Frank, the Executive Director for the Reds Community Fund. Thank you for joining us.